Are you looking for new books to read? Do you like finding a new special author? Are you tired of the same old books from the same old authors? Well then, welcome to Discovered Wordsmiths, a podcast where you can hear from fantastic new authors. Join Stephen Schneider as he finds and talks to authors you may not know, but authors that have worked hard to write great new books. Hear about their book and why you should check it out. So sit back and listen to today's Discovered Wordsmith.
So let's move on and talk some author stuff for all the authors listening. So before we talk about our topic, which is going to be lessons learned in marketing, what are some things you personally have learned? You mentioned some things you've learned from your editor, how to write, what to put in the book and that. So talk about some of those things that you've learned from when you started with book 1 to now with book 5.
Well, one of the big things that I've learned, and I had a professor that I went to for some help sometimes, and he told me I tried to overwrite things. And I remember one thing that he told me. He says, "Trust your reader." He says, if they're smart enough to read, if they're reading one of your books, they can read at least an eighth grade level. And he said, trust them. You don't have to tell them over and over about something. And that I kind of did that in my first book. And I got away from that. I learned. And there's just a lot of things a good editor can point out to you that you do. And any of these independents that write books and don't get a good editor, and have a thorough editor, not just one editor. I have a editor that I use just for Spanish because I use a lot of Spanish words in my books, and I have them checked to make sure that the Spanish in my books is correct. And that's the thing about the indies. And when they went to, everybody started going to the indie or self-published. We can just, let's face it, we can put a book out there and throw it up on the deal, have an ebook overnight. A lot of stuff's got out there that's just not good literature, and we've got to be all authors have got to make sure their works are properly edited and formatted and ready to be published. I think that's key. And I've always done that because whatever I do, I want it done right.
Okay, nice. And that's a good lesson right there. And when you're writing, so you're in your RV and you've got your dog helping you out. So what do you use to write? What services or what software do you like, or do you do anything special with your writing?
Not anything special. I put everything on this laptop right here I've written 3 books on this laptop that we're using here to communicate with. I take it along. It's a small laptop. I use Word, and I get it all together, and I don't worry too much about my grammar or anything as I'm reading it. I'm trying to get the story out as it's in my mind. And one of the fallacies that I have, when I get into a good scene, I'll sometimes write till I just can't go anymore. I think the record is about 18 hours, but I had a good scene going. It was up here, and I wanted to get it. I wanted to get it on paper. So that's how I write. And I don't have anything special software or anything like that. But I have some good people. I have a good assistant who goes over, and she's got an eagle eye. She can miss it. If I see something or just a little space off, she's on top of it. And I get her to get it in tip top shape before I go to an editor. But I use, in this last book, I had 6 what I call advanced readers. once we got the manuscript where we thought it ought to be, I sent it out to 6 good readers who I knew, and never, ever ask somebody that loves you to critique your work. Always find somebody afar that'll do it and give you a good critique.
Right. Yeah. I found that out. I had several close friends and family members read my book, and the feedback I got was, yeah, I liked it. It was good, which doesn't help me at all. And I don't know if I completely believe them,
Well,
especially if the book wasn't written for them. So,
one of those readers, advanced readers that read my book, I wanted her, she's a Spanish teacher here in San Antonio and a friend of mine. I said, I want you to read it and make sure all my Spanish is correct, nothing that would be misconstrued or offensive to anyone that was Spanish speaking. And she read it and she found a few things where we missed a thing or two and got it corrected for me. And I said, well, what did you think about the book? She says, I didn't like the ending. I said, why? She says, I didn't want it to end. And I said, well, it didn't, because the next book, it didn't end. And that's the wonderful thing about a saga series like this.
right. And that's, you mentioned earlier, it's about the characters. And I think that's stronger and more important. Even the movies and stories about battles, if it's not character driven, people aren't as interested in it. People think they're going to be, but just action battles are not as interesting as people think.
The characters make it all. And
Yeah.
and Steve, I had written for the family a narrative for them about our family and who they were, when they were born, when the Indians killed them, and all that sort of thing. And I found they didn't read it. They didn't. I knew they didn't read it because I'd ask them about it, and my own children. And the reason is that facts are boring as hell. You gotta tell. You gotta have a story. You have to bring those facts into your story, and that's what my books are all about. Is taking things that actually happened and put a story around them. And I
Right.
use my family because they were there,
Right.
to do that.
Yep. Okay, so Jim, we were talking a little bit before we started the podcast, and you come from a career, a life of marketing, and you've applied some of that to your book. So tell us about what you used to do with marketing, and then what are some of the things you're doing to market your book, that lessons learned?
Well, I was with the old W.A. Taylor company for many years, where the importers of Courvoisier cognac and a lot of fine wines and products. And we marketed a different way. We went out and got distribution. Our distributors were required, if we came out with a new label or new size or product or label change, to get distribution the first week up to 50%. And if they didn't have it up to 70% by the end of the first month, uh, we we'd find another distributor, and they knew that. So that's kind of how we call that the push. We put the push on. I tried that with my book. I tried to get it into every store I could, find. And at that, you got to realize the time my first book came out, there was no Kindle. And I thought, well, the only way to sell is get to the bookstores, and I did. I got it in a lot of bookstores, and I'm not like James Patterson. Nobody knows about David Bowles and down in.
Well, that's why you're here.
That's
Discover
why I'm
wordsmiths.
here, and
That's what we're
that's what
doing.
I'm doing, and I'm doing it different. And I've hired Mikey Mickelson, who's a great PR public relations person, and he knows what he's doing, and I'm going to listen to him. I tried to sell books like I sold Courvoisier cognac, and it doesn't work that way. And so I've had to learn about social media and all that sort of thing, and everything that I was originally told. This I went to a writers conference and that the Writers League put on, and they kept saying, "Well, social media, social media. And you know what? They're right. And I'm not real excited about social media because I tend to spend about 2 or 3 hours a day that I could be writing on social media. But that's where my little 400 and something stories I told you about that's on my website. I tell those little stories, and it's amazing. People read them and they say, "Wow, I want to get his book." So that's social media is what it is, and you can get in all the bookstores you want to, but if you don't have a name, if you haven't become a branded author, nobody's going to find one or two books in a store with 100,000 books, like a big box Barnes and Noble. I thought, boy, let's get in every Barnes and Noble, and we did. And guess what? That day came when I thought I was going to get a check in the mail, and they says, "Hey, every store has got 3 of your books. What do you want us to do with them?" And I knew what it cost to send them back, and I said, "Just keep them." And that's why you see those books for 75% off when you go in the front door of a big Barnes and Noble, because the books have been given to them. They could sell them for 10 cents and still make profit. So,
Right.
yeah.
So you did marketing. You marketed alcohol essentially, and
Yes,
things like that. And what you found was most of the lessons you've learned didn't apply to what you want to do now. It's
exactly.
different.
But I will tell you what did apply. You got to tell a story. And I got my company to start with some of our products. One of them, the first I ever did, was on Tia Maria. Tia Maria is a coffee flavored liqueur, similar to Kahlua, and wasn't selling very good. And I convinced them that we should come up with a story of the black bean, because I went down to Jamaica and saw where they were making it using a black bean. And I made a story, a fictional story, but a believable story about the black bean being, and there were black pearls and the Tia Maria. And that story got written up quite a bit. And we used it in marketing, and it worked because it was just a story. And there's all kinds of stories that, if you'll ever notice, about old Jack Daniels and Jim Beam and all these guys, there were some great stories. Some of them they can't tell because it wasn't until 1939 that they were legal. So,
Right. So I love that you just said that. So it fits right in that marketing is telling the story of you, yourself, your brand, your books, and tying all that in. People want stories. And I think I've been hearing that more with nonfiction. People don't just want to read a dry book on how to do this and how to do that, a business book. They want a story in there. And nonfiction has become more conversational and more easier to access because of that, using stories to tell what you want.
well, in education, teachers have now learned that telling a story, and I had a history teacher that was really great at telling stories, that once you heard her story about a historic event and somebody in that event, you'd remember it forever. But just reading it out of a book that this happened on such and such a day and wherever it was, uh, you lose that real quick. But if you have a story tied with it, you'll remember that story.
Right. Absolutely. Um, so you didn't use a lot of your marketing that you had learned, you had to relearn. And you mentioned social media, and you said how important that is, and you spend time on social media. And I know I've talked to other authors that say the exact opposite of that, that social media is not that important, that they don't do it at all. So why do you use social media and think it's important? And what do you do on social media?
Well, the reality is, it's all you can do. When I was in the liquor business, I had a $35 million marketing uh, budget, and we bought billboards, we bought magazine, we bought all kinds of advertising on our brands, and we always did it upright. Well, no author is going to have that kind of money. And even the few publishing companies that are left in the world, which is only four of them, I believe now. I think we lost another one just recently. I don't know if that deal went through or not, but
Yeah, I don't remember.
yeah, I think it's about four now, and they're not even American owned. And the even they are not spending a lot of money. The only ones they're spending money on is the James Pattersons and the like, Rollins, who started out, and I think we should point that out. J.K. Rowling started out as a self-published independent author, whatever you want to call them. She didn't have anybody behind her. Once she sold some books with no marketing, and then suddenly, what happens? A big publisher comes, jumps in the middle of your act, and wants to, and it really took that off, movies and the whole ball of wax. But if you don't have that, as far as I can see, social media is the only thing an independent author has, is a social media, and especially Facebook. I have 5,000 people who are so so-called friends, and then I have about 1,000 on my author's page, and we communicate. They'll sometimes say something about my book or this and that, and I communicate with them. I have probably about 200 or 300 actively every day go through, read their posts, make a comment, and it takes time. But I don't know what else I could do. I could take that same time and sit on a street corner and sell books, I guess. I've tried just about everything else, but it's amazing how I sell books when I do my storytelling.
And I like that. So you basically are telling some of the short stories that you have, talking like around the campfire again, and
Yes.
getting people interested, getting people to come to you. Is that
And if you notice I don't use the word blog on my website. The little button that you push to get to my stories is campfire stories. And here where I live, we have a campfire, and just we get around and tell stories at the campfire. And I tell stories at the campfire where I'm heading off next. And I always wear my hat. And what I like about the campfire, we can have hot chocolate or something out, and it's just real casual. And old Becca, goes around and keeps everybody happy. She'll go and sit by somebody, and they'll pet her for about a few minutes, and she'll go to. They get tired of petting her. She goes to the next one, and it seems like everybody likes that in the stories. And
nice?
I generally, well, when I do sell books, they usually buy the entire series. So that helps a lot in the book sales, having the series to sell rather than just one book.
Right. And I think several things you've said are good lessons for everybody. First of all, you've got, how many did you say, like 450 short stories? I
Yes,
know
and yes,
I know a lot of authors uh, don't want to give away a book. They don't want to write a short story and give it away. They want paid. But what happens is all those short stories you've written get people interested, and then they do go buy your whole series.
and I hope someday those short series I might make them into an anthology or
I was going
some.
to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing you said that I think a lot of people miss is you probably have heard this, that the best advertising for your book is your next book. That you get a series, you get books, and they help sell each other. But what you also said was you've gone through, you use several different editors and help to make sure your book is top notch. And that's a lesson right there. Whether it's your short stories that you give away free or the books themselves, if they're not top notch and they haven't been edited well, nobody cares what your next book is. They're not going to want to buy a whole series, like you said, people do with you.
Yeah, that's the key. You've got to make that product perfect. You can't have one mistake in it. Now, I don't know anyone that's ever going. You'll find something, but the one thing that's great about Amazon Lightning Source now, print on demand, is you do make a mistake, you you can get it corrected
Right.
in You can go in and you can get it corrected. But I like it to go out there. The first readers are the most important readers you've got. You think about the person that buys that first book, they're going to tell two or three other people they either like it or they didn't like it. So it's got to be good.
Right. Agreed. And obviously people like yours because I mean, even though it sounds like only 23, I know a lot of authors that struggle to get just one or two reviews. So you're doing pretty good getting that
Well,
23.
I'm fortunate to have, I believe, 5 stars on all 4 books,
Yeah, it looks like it.
and only thing is I don't have enough of them. I don't know how to go. I hate to beg people to give me a review. If they want to give me a review, that's good. But I'm not. I don't want to beg them. But I always try and mention it. I really appreciate reviews, and I do that if somebody writes me or I put a little note in and says, "Hey, I would really appreciate a review." But I find a lot of readers don't understand that what you're asking for is an Amazon review, and that is a lot of people don't buy their books from Amazon. And but nearly everybody has an Amazon account. Nearly everyone does. So I would hope that they could, give me a review. They don't have to buy the book, from Amazon as long as they have an account. They'll accept a review. But
Or even better, getting reviews on some of the other platforms. Because I think even though I don't know a lot of authors making a full-time living from the other platforms, I know that there are some sales and there are some people that buy from those platforms, and there's probably some genres maybe that are even more popular. So if you could get people to give you reviews on other platforms, it just makes you stand out that much more on the books that are
exactly.
there. Yeah, absolutely. So
I'll take a review anywhere I can get it, even a
right.
bad one. Even a bad one. I have, fortunately, I haven't had any bad ones, but
Well, that's
I,
good.
I like reviews.
Yeah, agreed. And the more you have, the better. And eventually, you'll probably get a bad one or a not as good one. But what the studies have shown that I've been seeing is that it's not so important to have all good reviews, all 5 stars, that it's actually good to have some bad ones with people saying things like, oh, well, I thought this would focus more on the battles of the Civil War or something like
Yeah.
that. And somebody else will say, well, or see that and say, oh, well, I don't care about the battles of the Civil War. So actually, I'm glad it doesn't have that. Let me look at it. So the bad reviews actually sometimes help define better what it's about and help people make decisions.
I agree with you. And I like to say, social media. You tell me what else an author can do. I can do book signings in the stores and that sort of thing. But it's the social media that's the only way I see. And I'll tell you, it took me a while. It took me a while to get there, but now I understand it.
Well, I do like if you take the term social media, we use that to communicate in groups and be with others. But when you were talking about telling your stories around the campfire for others, that's the more long term social media. That's what's been around a lot longer, and it seems to be working for you.
Well, that started with the Indians back long before the white man came.
Right, right. All right. So, David, I really appreciate this talk. We've had some interesting discussion on some marketing that you're doing. Before we go and wrap things up, what advice would you give to new authors that are listening?
Well, keep your day job for sure, or have another source of income because it's going to take a while before anyone knows who you are. If you just started writing, and now if you happen to work for Fox, that's not a problem. You can promote your book on Fox. You can sell a lot of copies real fast. But it's not an easy. I will tell you this: I've had quite a few jobs in my life, but and I'm older, and I'm working harder than I've ever worked in my life.
Nice. That's some interesting insight for those listening that may be wondering, should I do this or not? It's not
Well, I think
necessarily
it's
for.
good, and if you're writing to make money, it's hard. If you're writing because you enjoy it, it's good.
It's easy. I agree. All right. Well, David, I appreciate you taking some time and talking with everyone today about your books, and I wish you luck when the new one comes out.
Thank you, Steve.
Hi, if you enjoyed this episode of Discovered Wordsmiths, please support the author. Go to their website, go to Amazon, look them up, get the book. And if you click on the link that I have in the show notes, you'll also help support the podcast so I can keep the hosting and all the software I use and keep it running to help more authors. When I am recording this, we've got over 100 episodes, lots of authors. Go to the website, discoveredwordsmiths.com. Check it out. There's a lot of great authors, probably in some genre that you love. See what they have. Check out their books. That's what the point of the podcast is for. So people can discover new authors, find some new books they love, support the authors so they can continue writing. So please support them. And if you do like the podcast, if you've been thinking of podcasting or you're a writer, I've got some links also at the website. Click on those if you're interested in any of the software or services that I talk about. Everything that I have there is something I use, so I've got an affiliate link. Again, it's a little bit, if everyone clicked on those, if they were going to get it anyway, it helps keep the podcast going. So let's all help each other out and discover more authors to read.
Thank you for listening to Discovered Wordsmiths. Come back next week and listen to another author discuss the road they've traveled, and maybe, sometime in the near future, it might be you.